Kabir had forgotten the exact curve of the road that led to Daryapur, but his body remembered. As the van rumbled over the uneven dirt path, a strange tension took hold of him, tightening around his ribs. 17 years had passed since he had last seen the village, but nothing on this road suggested time had moved on. The same crooked trees leaned over the path, the same dry ditches flanked the fields. The same silence hung in the air, too heavy to be natural. He kept his bag close to his chest as the vehicle jerked to a stop in front of a worn-out wooden milestone. Daryapur minus 2 kilometers. The driver didn't say anything. He just glanced at Kabir through the dusty mirror and waited. Kabir paid, stepped down, and stood alone on the cracked road. The fields were vast and quiet, the wheat standing tall and too still, as if holding its breath. Kabir adjusted the strap of his satchel, tightened his grip on the old leather handle, and walked. Every few steps, his shoes kicked up dry dust that clung to his pants and coated his lips with the taste of memory. He hadn't told anyone the real reason he was coming back. Not his friends in Lahore, not the headmaster who reluctantly approved his extended leave from the school. Everyone assumed he was returning to finalize the property his father had left behind after his sudden death, sign some documents, sell the land, and disappear. But that wasn't why he had come. The real reason was folded neatly in his inside coat pocket, a letter, barely 3 lines long, written in his shaky, almost childlike hand. He is still beneath the floor. Come before the whispering spreads again, dot no name, no sender. Just that dot. He had stared at it for hours the night it arrived, his mind flooding with memories he had spent years trying to drown. The floor, the whispering, the blood on his father's hands, the boy who vanished, and his own voice screaming. In the night when no one listened, Kabir reached the village as the sun began to dip behind the horizon. The houses were scattered across the field like broken bones, most of them abandoned, the rest barely inhabited. No paint, no children playing. Just silence and the slow creak of a metal swing in the distance, moving gently in the wind even though there was no wind. The house was exactly where he remembered it, at the far edge of the village, past the dried-up well and behind the skeletal remains of a collapsed granary. It looked smaller now, more crooked, like it had been waiting too long to collapse, but hadn't found the courage yet. The roof slanted dangerously on one side, and the wooden door hung open by one rusted hinge, swinging slightly. Kabir hesitated. Then he stepped inside. The air smelled of old incense and something older stale oil, mold, and an undertone of something faintly metallic. Blood, maybe, or a memory. He dropped his bag by the door. The room was bare. A few broken pieces of furniture were pushed against the walls. The charpai he had once slept on was still there, slanted, one leg shorter than the rest. Dust blanketed everything, thick and undisturbed, but the floor was clean, polished. In fact, he moved closer and crouched, running his fingers along the wooden planks. They had been scrubbed, perhaps recently. In the center, the grain of the wood looked different, darker, as though something had seeped into it and refused to leave. He stood up quickly, brushing off his hands. He didn't light a fire, just unrolled the fen blanket from his bag and lay down on the charpai, staring at the ceiling. The beams above were cracked and blackened in places, water damage trailing like veins across the wood. He listened for mice, for rats, for any signs of life, but there was only the sound of the wind, and even that seemed to hold back Dot at some point. His eyes grew heavy. He didn't remember falling asleep, but he remembered waking up Dot. It was the sound. That pulled him back, soft, deliberate, and wrong. Creak. Pause. Creak. Drag beneath him. Kabir's eyes flew open. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Just listened. There it was again, faint, distant, but unmistakably close. Footsteps. Slow, uneven, on wood that should have been solid. From under. The floor dot, and then a voice, barely a breath. Cold as night, you came back. He sat upright, his breath caught in his throat. The room was dark now, moonlight filtering through the cracked window pane in pale slits. He stared at the floor, waiting for the sound to return. It didn't. Only silence. The kind of silence that feels thick enough to drown in. Morning came reluctantly. Kabir stood outside the house, his arms wrapped around himself, watching the fields sway an unnatural rhythm. The villagers moved like shadows in the distance, quiet, suspicious. Most didn't look at him. A few glanced his way and then quickly turned their heads. He made his way to the village square, where the old men still gathered, fewer now than he remembered and all older. More bones than skin. One of them sat with his back against the banyan tree, eyes pale and foggy. "You're back," the old man said before Kabir could speak. "How did you?" "They always come back when the whispering starts again." His voice was cracked, slow, deliberate. Same age. Same face. "Like your father?" Kabir frowned. "You knew him?" "All my life, and I knew the boy too. The one who vanished." Kabir's heart twisted. "Ayan," the old man nodded slowly. "The scarecrow saw everything." Kabir stepped back. "What?" But the man only chuckled, and his head tilted forward. Asleep, or pretending. The other villagers didn't speak. One old woman hissed and closed her door as he walked past. Another spit in the dust and muttered something about cursed blood. By the time Kabir reached the edge of the fields again, he felt cold despite the heat. The scarecrow still stood where it always had. It was older now, its straw arms limp, the shirt torn and colorless. The sackcloth face had no eyes anymore, just stitched holes. Yet somehow it felt like it was watching him. As children, they used to dare each other to run up and touch it at night. Ayan had once done it twice in a row. The next morning, he had scratches on his arm, 3 long, deep lines. No one ever figured out how. A week later, Ayan disappeared. Kabir looked at the scarecrow for a long time. Then he turned back toward the house, and that night, the floor creaked again. He didn't try to sleep that night. Instead, he sat in the same spot on the sharp eye, blanket wrapped around his shoulders, staring at the floor. The lantern flickered on the cracked windowsill, casting long, shivering shadows across the room. Every now and then, the wind would knock gently at the wooden walls, as if something outside wanted to come in, not all at once, but politely, patiently. At 2:46 a.m., the sound returned. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It came as it had the night before. Soft steps, one by one, followed by the dragging of something heavy. Like feet that didn't know they were dead, or didn't care. Kabir leaned forward, heart pounding in his chest. The whisper came again. "You came back." His skin crawled. He gripped the edge of the blanket, knuckles whitening. He wanted to ask who, wanted to scream and shout and demand to know what lay beneath the floor, but his voice refused to work. His throat had dried up like the old village well. Then the creaking stopped, but something worse replaced it. Breath. Long, slow. Right below him, Kabir stood up abruptly. The room swayed. His legs felt cold, not just from fear, but from something else. The floor beneath him was icy, as if the house had drawn in frost from the earth itself. He stumbled to the corner where his bag was and pulled out a small flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, weak and trembling, as if even the light was afraid. He crouched in the center of the room and knocked on the wood. Hollow. He pressed his ear down, waited. Silenced. He knocked again. This time, a whisper responded. Not in words, but in a shiver that ran up his spine. Kabir slept with the flashlight on and his back to the wall, eyes wide open until the sun broke through Dot. By mid-morning. He was pacing. He couldn't leave. Not now. He needed to understand. To know what his father had buried and why. His childhood was full of gaps, of nights spent hiding under beds, of bruises and voices and long stretches of silence where his mother should have been. The only friend he ever had disappeared without warning, and no one in the village ever spoke about it. They whispered, though, just like the house. Kabir found a crowbar in the old storage room behind the kitchen. It was rusted but strong enough. He stood over the center of the floor again, bracing himself. Then he drove the metal down. The first board cracked easily. The second splintered. Dust flew upward in little clouds that stung his eyes. He kept going until he'd cleared a neat square of planks, revealing a second layer beneath, smoother, newer wood, nailed together in a different pattern. This was no accident. No repair. It was a cover. He paused, listening. Nothing. Then he pushed the crowbar into the edge and pried it up. The smell hit him first. Old earth. Mildew, something coppery beneath it all. The hidden floor revealed a dark cavity wide enough to crawl into. A rope ladder, brittle with age, hung loosely against the wall. Kabir hesitated only a moment. Then he climbed down. The space was small and cramped. Dirt walls, low ceiling. The air was damp and close, like the inside of a crypt. His flashlight flickered once, then steadied. He moved carefully, brushing aside cobwebs. Heart-pounding. At the end of the crawl space was a wooden box, no bigger than a child's coffin. He stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, he opened the lid. Inside were bones. Small, fragile, wrapped in stained cloth. On top lay a necklace, a small silver locket. He knew it instantly. Ayan's. Kabir's breath caught. His fingers shook as he picked it up. The chain was still intact. He opened it. Inside was a photo of two boys, one with messy hair and a crooked smile, the other with wide, serious eyes. The past cracked open like a wound. He remembered the last time he saw Ayan, the day they dared each other to walk through the wheat fields after dusk. The scarecrow stood like a ghost at the far end, its sack head tilted, its stitched eyes watching. Kabir had gone first. Ayan had followed, but on the way back, Ayan had stopped. He'd said he heard something. He turned around. Kabir had kept running, and when he finally looked back, Ayan was gone. No one believed him. Not really. His father beat him bloody that night, told him to never speak of it again. His mother cried for days. Then she stopped. Then she disappeared. Kabir clutched the locket tightly. You left me? The voice came not from behind him, but from inside him. It echoed through his chest, behind his eyes and his teeth. You ran. Kabir turned, crawling backward, flashlight swinging wildly. Something moved in the darkness, not a shadow. Shape. He scrambled up the ladder and slammed the floor shut behind him. Nailed it back, not caring how crude or loud it was. He sat there for hours, the locket still in his hand. Outside, the wind picked up. He looked through the window. The scarecrow was gone. Kabir didn't sleep that night, or the next. He sat outside, staring at the field, waiting. The villagers avoided him now. No one came near the house. No one spoke his name. He tried to talk to the old man again, the one under the banyan tree. But he was gone, vanished, like so many others. Kabir wandered through the village, calling out. Only one person answered. A woman in her 70s, face lined like tree bark, her eyes rimmed with yellow. You opened it, she said. He nodded. You let him out. I didn't mean, doesn't matter, it's awake now. What is it? He whispered. Who? Your father called it a mistake. Her voice shook, but we all let it happen. No one stopped him. We were afraid. That child, he was the first, but not the last. Kabir swallowed. So the others? Offerings, she said, almost in a whisper. The thing beneath doesn't sleep unless it's fed. He staggered back. Leave, boy, she said, turning away, before it makes you one of them. Kabir returned home. The house was cold. Again, not temperature, soul. He walked in, slowly, carefully. The locket burned in his pocket. The floor creaked under his feet. He no longer trusted it to hold him. He walked into the kitchen and found muddy footprints on the floor. Small. Like a child's. They led from the trapdoor to the back door, which stood wide open. He stepped outside. The wheat swayed violently, though the air was still at the far end of the field. The scarecrow stood again. Only now it wore a silver locket, and its stitched eyes were open. Kabir didn't go near the fields that day. He stayed inside the house. The windows shut, every crevice stuffed with cloth, every mirror turned to face the wall. His fingers kept finding the locket in his pocket, curling around it like it was a relic of something holy or cursed. The scarecrow had moved. It had clearly moved, and now it wore Ian's locket. No one else could have placed it there. Kabi, or hadn't told a soul what he had found underground. Hadn't spoken the name. Hadn't dared. But the thing in the wheat field knew. He hadn't slept in 2 nights, and he was beginning to see things. Flickers of movement in dark corners, faces in the smudged glass, whispers that didn't come from his own head. Sometimes, when he looked at the floor too long, he swore it pulsed beneath him, like something breathing just under the wood. That evening, he made chai and sat by the window, sipping slowly, watching the horizon fade into darkness. A lantern flickered on the table, casting soft, golden light. The air was thick and motionless. Then he heard the voice again, closer this time. You ran. I waited. It came from inside the walls. Kabir stood abruptly, heart thudding against his ribs. He held the lantern high, casting the glow across the room, searching the corners, the ceiling, the edges of the floor. Nothing. But something had changed. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was crowded, like someone was holding their breath. Right next to him, watching, waiting. He backed into the kitchen. That's when he noticed the door again, the one leading to the backyard, slightly ajar. Not wide open this time, just cracked, like a mouth deciding whether to whisper or scream. He moved toward it. The fields were a black sea, swaying under a wind he could not feel. The scarecrow was still there, closer now. It stood near the old fence, only 20 feet from the house, and something was different. It had arms. Real ones. Pale, thin, dangling from the sleeves of the tattered shirt, hanging loose and limp like broken branches. Kabir slammed the door shut and bolted it with a rusted rod. His breath came in sharp bursts. The lantern flickered wildly, casting spastic shadows that danced like demons along the walls. He couldn't stay here. He needed answers. He pulled the diary out again, the one he found in his father's cupboard. He had barely skimmed it before. Now he forced himself to read every line, every scroll, even the one smudged with what looked like dried blood. March 2nd. The voice came back last night. It was him. I know it was. He knows what I did. March 6th. The ground is hungry. The wheat grows strong, but it's not because of rain. March 9th. Kabir sees things. He doesn't say it, but I know. The boy is with him, following. March 15th. The scarecrow moved again. Kabir turned the page with trembling hands. March 20th. I tried to burn the bones. The fire died. The wind screamed. Something laughed in the smoke. March 27th. I buried it deeper. But I can still hear the child crying beneath the floor. The entry stopped there. Kabir sat in silence, the diary resting in his lap. His father had tried to get rid of it, whatever it was. But he'd failed, and now it had woken again. He stared at the floor. Could he bury the bones somewhere else? Take them far away, scatter them, cleanse the house? Would that even help? The scarecrow's face flickered through his mind, stitched mouth stretched wide, locket gleaming in the moonlight, arms that did not belong. That night, Kabir didn't sleep. At midnight, the whispering began again, not just beneath the floor, but from the walls, the door, even the glass of the windows. It filled the house like smoke. I waited all this time. In the dark, you forgot me. You left me. The voice didn't sound angry. That was the worst part. It sounded hurt. Abandoned. Kabir pressed his palms to his ears, fell to his knees, and screamed, but no sound came out. Only breath. Then a knock. A single, gentle knock on the front door. Looked up. Another knock. Slow, polite. He stood, moving like someone underwater, and opened the door. No one was there, but the scarecrow was now standing at the edge of the porch. Closer than ever. Its stitched eyes glistened in the moonlight. The locket swung gently from its neck, and from one sleeve, something dropped. A small bone, a finger. Kabir slammed the door, bolted it, and backed away. But the knocking didn't stop. It returned every few minutes from different parts of the house. The back door, the windows, even the walls. Tap, tap, tap. By morning, Kabir had not closed his eyes. He stood in the yard, shovel in hand, staring at the field. He would dig. He would find the original grave and bury the bones properly. Perhaps even bless the ground. He didn't know how. But he had to do something. He couldn't let the thing grow stronger. Scarecrow was gone, vanished with the night. He stepped into the WHEATFIELD. It swallowed him whole. The stalks were taller than before, brushing against his shoulders, whispering as he passed through them. His feet sank into the soil, too soft, too wet, as if it had recently been disturbed. He reached the center of the field, where the wheat stood in a perfect circle. Here. This was where it had happened. The first offering, the original sin. He began to dig. The earth gave way easily, as if eager to be opened. He dug until the shovel struck something hard wood. A box. Another coffin. He dropped to his knees and clawed at the dirt. The box opened with a creak. Inside, nothing. Only a note. Folded once, written the same trembling hand. Too late. Kabir stared, confused. And then he heard it. A rustle behind him. He turned. The scarecrow stood just beyond the circle, closer than ever. Only now, it moved. It took a step forward. Then, another. Its feet dragged through the wheat like roots tearing through flesh, and its stitched mouth opened. Kabir screamed. Kabir ran. He didn't think, didn't plan, didn't even feel his feet hit the ground. The wheat clawed at his arms as he tore through it, blind, directionless, driven by sheer terror. Behind him, the sound of dragging, slow, rhythmic, stalked him like a second heartbeat. The scarecrow was walking. Every shadow in the field seemed to reach for him, pulling at his clothes, his hair, as if the wheat itself was trying to drag him back into the soil. His breath came in ragged gasps. The sky overhead, once pale with morning light, was now a dull, bruised gray, as though the sun had simply given up. Kabir burst through the edge of the field and fell onto the dirt path that led to the village. He didn't stop to catch his breath. He ran straight to the only place that had ever felt safe, the old temple by the river. It was abandoned. Now, its walls cracked and its deity half buried under dust. But when Kabir was a child, his grandmother would bring him there to light candles for protection, to whisper the names of those who had passed too early. Maybe, just maybe, Something sacred still lingered. He stumbled inside and slammed the rusted iron gate shut behind him. His legs gave out and he collapsed at the feet of the broken idol. He was shaking more from the cold crawling up his spine than from the sprint dot, and then it was quiet dot, too quiet dot, no dragging. No whispers, no footsteps, only silence and his own ragged breathing. He stayed there for hours, crouched in the corner, rocking slightly like a child. The shadows inside the temple stretched and shrank as the clouds passed overhead, but nothing else moved. Nothing followed dot by dusk. Kabir finally gathered the courage to return home. The walk back was long and slow. Every step was taken with his heart in his throat. Every gust of wind made him flinch. But the field was still. The scarecrow gone. When he reached the house, he stopped at the gate. The door was open dot just slightly inside. The lantern still flickered, untouched. Kabir stepped through slowly. He found the locket on the table, and beside. It's something worse, a child's drawing, rough and scratched, as if drawn in panic. A stick figure with a stitched mouth, long arms, and a small boy standing beside it, smiling on the back. And a child's messy scrawl were the words, "He was my only friend." Kabir's skin crawled. He knew what this was. This wasn't just a spirit. It wasn't just a curse. It was something older, something buried in loneliness and forgotten grief. Something that had been loved once, then discarded. He had to end it. He couldn't leave the village. It would follow. It was tied to blood, to guilt, to roots in the soil. He had to confront it, speak to it, understand it. If he could dot so that night, Kabir returned to the field. He carried no tools, no fire, no salt, no protection, only the locket. He stood in the center of the wheat circle and held it out like an offering and waited. The night was thick with silence. Then footsteps soft, wet, dragging. He didn't move. The wheat parted slowly like a curtain, and the scarecrow stepped into the circle. Kabir met its stitched eyes. "I know what they did to you," he whispered. "I know who you were." The scarecrow tilted its head. "I'm sorry," Kabir said. He didn't know what else to say. "I didn't know until now." The figure shuddered, its form twitching, spasming, and then it spoke not with its mouth, but through the wind, through the field, through Kabir's own memories. It was never supposed to be me. Ayan was afraid of the dark. I wasn't, he dared me to go into the field first. So I did. I never came back. Kabir's knees buckled. He remembered it now. A long-forgotten summer evening. The two of them, young, running through the wheat, daring each other to explore. A game. Nothing more. But Ayan never returned. Alone, Kabir had. He had gone home and never looked back. He had forgotten, blocked it, erased the guilt like a dirty mark. On the floor until now. He had buried his brother with fear and silence. The scarecrow stepped forward. Its stitched mouth trembled. Kabir held out the locket. "Come home." A silence settled between them. Then, slowly, the scarecrow raised its hand and took the locket. As soon as it closed its fingers around it, the wind stopped. The wheat froze. Even the moon seemed to dim. Kabir's breath caught. The scarecrow's body began to fall apart, not violently, but gently, like ash. Like something being released. The stitches unraveled. The limbs crumbled. The coat dropped to the ground in a quiet heap. And standing there in the pale moonlight was a boy. No older than 10. Eyes wide. Familiar. Hollow. Annette, or what remained of him. Kabir stepped forward, trembling. "I'm sorry," he said again. The boy looked at him, and for a moment, just one, there was recognition. Then the boy smiled and vanished. Gone. No scream. No wind, just silence. The wheat field never grew again. In the weeks that followed, the village spoke of strange winds and dreams they couldn't explain. But the hauntings stopped, the whispers faded. The scarecrow never returned. Kabir stayed. He rebuilt the house slowly, planted sunflowers where the wheat had once swayed. He kept the locket on the mantle above a small frame, an old photo of two boys smiling in the sun. And some nights, when the wind was just right, he thought he could still hear a laugh, faint, happy, free. The days grew longer, and Daryapur began to feel less like a ghost town and more like a place waking from a long nightmare. Kabir worked tirelessly to restore his father's house, repairing broken beams, replacing windows, and scrubbing years of dust from every surface. The villagers watched cautiously at first, but some began to nod politely when they passed by. The fear that had frozen them was thawing ever so slowly, yet Kabir remained wary. The locket sat on the mantle, gleaming softly in the sunlight, a silent reminder of what had been lost and what had been saved. One afternoon, as he cleared weeds near the old well, a small girl approached him. She was no more than 8, with curious eyes and tangled hair. She held out a wildflower. "For you," she said, her voice sweet but shy. Kabir smiled gently, accepting the gift. "Thank you. What's your name?" "Zara." She lived at the edge of the village, near the new houses built by the few who had returned. Zara visited often after that, bringing stories of the village's slow return to life, the planting of crops, the laughter of children playing in the dusty streets, the return of the monsoon rains. One evening, as Kabir sat outside watching the stars blink into existence, Zara climbed up onto the porch. "Do you still hear the whispers?" she asked. Kabir hesitated, then shook his head. "Not anymore." She smiled softly. "Sometimes when I visit the fields at night, I feel like someone's watching over me." He looked toward the empty wheat field beyond the village. The sunflowers swayed in the breeze, bright and golden. "Maybe," Kabir said quietly, "he's watching over all of us now." A peace settled over the village, a fragile, healing peace. But Kabir knew the past never truly disappeared. It simply waits in the shadows, in the silent corners of the mind, ready to whisper again. And sometimes, when the wind was just right, Kabir could swear he heard a faint laugh carried on the breeze, the laugh of a boy freed at last.